December 2021 to June 2024. Mawanga, Nakuru County. At night, fires kept breaking out. Not accidents, not faulty wiring. Houses burned, and inside them, women were found already dead and assaulted. What first looked like isolated tragedies began to reveal a disturbing pattern. In several cases, firefighters arrived expecting to put out flames, only to uncover bodies. There was no forced entry reported, no screams heard in time, just smoke rising into the night sky. For months, fear moved quietly through Mawanga. Police would later link the incidents to a few young men. A suspect and his fellow gang would emerge. Horrifyingly, the gang would spot potential victims while in a construction work. One gang member would even stick around long enough to provide interviews on the scene of the crime.
Ndio kwa jirani kama kuna ungua. Wakati tulikuja moto ilikuwa imeanza kwa hiyo room ya kwanza hiyo. Sasa na hatukuwa na uwezo kwenda kufungua mlango katikati ya kuingia sitting room. Ilikuwa imewekwa bado ndani.
As this man stood distraught and heartbroken by what had transpired in one victim's house, one gang member, Kevin Omandi, remained motionless, his face devoid of emotion, his expression cold, empty, almost inhuman. But serious questions remained. How did they avoid suspicion for so long? Were the fires set to erase evidence? And could this have been stopped before more lives were lost? To understand what really happened in Nakuru, we have to go back to the first fire. The first known incident happened on Thursday, 2nd December 2021. Beatrice Akinyi was 21 years old. She worked as a house help in Kwabuda, Mawanga, Nakuru County. She was working in a 2-bedroom house in a home of a businesswoman known as Ruth Kariuki. That morning felt ordinary. She helped her employer plant flowers in the compound. Nothing seemed unusual. By early afternoon, she was alone in the house, as her employer had left for work. At around 1:30 p.m., neighbors noticed smoke rising from the property. They raised the alarm, and the fire was eventually put out. But Beatrice was nowhere to be found, and the living room TV was missing. Her employer, Ruth, tried calling her. Her phone rang, but there was no answer. At first, it appeared she might have fled after accidentally starting the fire, or even ran away with stolen items. However, that assumption would not last. The following day, detectives returned to the scene. Inside one of the bedrooms, beneath bedding and clothes, they made a discovery that shifted the entire case. Beatrice's body had been concealed. A post-mortem later confirmed she had died due to strangulation. The fire had not caused her death. It had been set afterward. What investigators initially treated as a tragic robbery began to look cold and calculated. There were no signs of forced entry, no reports of screams, no immediate suspects, just a fire and silence. For months, the case went cold. Then, 6 months later, another house burned. This time, police began to see a pattern emerging, a chilling connection between the flames and the lives lost. By mid-2022, investigators in Nakuru were starting to see the threads connecting the fires in Mawanga. The cases were no longer isolated tragedies. At the center of it all were 6 young men: Evans, Kevin, Josephat, Julius, Dennis, and Isaac. They were construction workers by day and residents of Manyani slum by night. However, beneath the casual jobs and unremarkable lives, they harbored something darker: sadistic tendencies, a calculated cruelty, and a shocking pleasure in the acts of murder, assault, and arson they committed. The first to be arrested was Evans Michori Kebwaro. By June 2022, at just 24 years old, Evans was taken into custody and confessed to being the mastermind. He said he was the one who coordinated the gang's operations. Evans's path to crime began long before Nakuru. Born in Masaba, Kisii County, he was the youngest of 5 children. After completing primary school in 2015, high school was out of reach due to poverty. So by 2016, Evans was riding a boda for work and engaging in petty crime. By 2018, he had left Kisii County, disowned by his family and shunned by his village after being released from Kisii prison due to assault and petty crime. In Nakuru, Evans drifted through casual work. There, he worked as a farmhand, security guard, and frequented construction sites. Each job ended the same way: suspicion, dismissal, and eviction. By 2022, he had lost everything that could have kept him on a normal path. It was here that he met the other 5 members of his gang: Kevin, Josephat, Julius, Dennis, and Isaac. Together, the 6 became part of Nakuru's Confirm Gang, a group dating back to 2007. Originally, Confirm had scammed people through fake M-Pesa messages, tricking victims into sending money. As Kenyans became aware of the scams, the gang shifted to SIM card fraud, bank withdrawals, and other swindles. When money from these schemes began drying up, they moved into robbery and narcotics, some operations ending in murder or maiming. Evans claimed in his confession that he met the others in June 2022, but investigators, looking at the first confirmed murder, found discrepancies. Their first known victim, Beatrice Akinyi, had been killed on Thursday, 2nd December 2021. This suggests that Evans and the others had been working together much earlier, likely in 2021, plotting and striking in secret. By the time of Beatrice's murder, the 6 had found their rhythm, combining petty crime, theft, and violence, then using fire to destroy evidence. It was a pattern of cruelty, methodical yet terrifyingly bold. The streets of Mawanga would never feel the same again. Beatrice would become the first known victim of the gang, and her murder would open the door to uncovering the full scale of its operations. This incident would eventually lead investigators deeper into a nightmare that had been quietly unfolding for months. After the murder of Beatrice Akinyi, the streets of Mawanga seemed to breathe a temporary sigh of relief. For months, the 6 men, Evans, Kevin, Josephat, Julius, Dennis, and Isaac, disappeared into the shadows. The slum of Manyani returned to its uneasy rhythm, unaware that the nightmare had only paused, not ended. The gang had laid low, waiting, watching, planning. And then, 6 months later, in June 2022, the next attack came. It began on Tuesday, 14th June 2022, around 4 p.m., when Kevin gathered the others. "We have a job tomorrow," he told Evans, Josephat, Julius, Dennis, and Isaac, and they agreed to meet the following day to finalize the details. The tone was casual, almost like any other day, but the air carried an unspoken danger. The next morning, Wednesday, 15th June 2022, the 6 met at a dusty playing field near Kingdom Seekers Church in Bondeni. By 9 a.m., they were ready to move. Evans, Kevin, and Josephat rode together on Kevin's motorbike. Julius, Dennis, and Isaac rode on Isaac's bike. By 9:30 a.m., they had arrived in Mawanga, where their second target awaited. The target was Grace Wanjiru, 21 years old, managing a small roadside shop while her mother, Esther Njoki, was at church. Kevin's plan was precise. Josephat and Dennis would approach Grace under the pretense of being carpenters sent by her mother. Grace, suspicious, called her mother. When her mother denied sending anyone, Grace dismissed the men. But that dismissal was all it took. Dennis and Josephat grabbed her using weapons. Just a few meters away from the shop, Evans, Julius, Kevin, and Isaac kept watch. Every move, every struggle was visible. The 4 men advanced, Kevin holding a bottle of petrol in one hand and a knife in the other. They forced Grace into the main house. Kevin and Isaac led her into a bedroom where they took her life. Isaac emerged afterward, instructing Evans and Julius to search the shop for valuables. They found 2,500 Kenyan shillings in the till and scratch cards worth 1,150 shillings. Dennis had already packed a 32-inch LG TV into a box. The men regrouped, and Kevin poured petrol on items inside the house, igniting a blaze that consumed it in minutes. By the time Grace's mother arrived, alerted by a neighbor, the fire was already raging. When the flames subsided, Grace's burnt remains were discovered on her bed. There were no signs of escape. An autopsy later conducted on 23 June 2022 confirmed what the community feared. She had been smothered to death, asphyxiated by pressure applied to her mouth and nose. But the gang was not finished. Just 5 days later, on 20th June 2022, the six gathered again at their meeting spot at a field near Kingdom Seekers Church. Kevin informed the group of another job for the following day. By 21st June, around 8 a.m., they met at Makaburini before heading into Mawanga. This time, their target was Susan Wambui, 36 years old, who ran a small shop attached to her home. Her 3-year-old son slept inside, unaware of the horror approaching. Dennis first confirmed Susan's presence. Once verified, the gang executed their plan. Dennis distracted her at the shop while the others scaled the back fence. Josfit, wielding a Maasai sword, led the group into the house. Susan was forced to hand over money from the shop before being dragged to the main house. Kevin and Julius strangled her in her bedroom. Then, Kevin doused the room and the sitting area where her son slept in petrol. He instructed Evans to kill the child, but Evans refused. A gang fled, setting the house ablaze and taking the television with them. Neighbors were able to rescue the child just in time. Susan, however, was dead, and the autopsy later confirmed strangulation and assault into a non-consensual act. The horror continued. 3 days later, on 24th June 2022, the gang set their sights on Diana Opicho, 25 years old. A member of the gang had arrived hours earlier to confirm that only Diana was at home. The others followed, gaining entry through an open back door. They tied a wire around her neck and interrogated her, forcing her to reveal the whereabouts of her valuables. Finding none in the locked bedroom, they accessed it through the ceiling. Meanwhile, Evans was tasked with packing stolen electronics at Diana's home. 2 members of the gang then killed Diana in her bedroom. Afterward, the 6 committed disturbing acts of sexual violence, revealing a darker, sadistic layer to their crimes beyond monetary gain. Evans then collected some items and carried them in a suitcase. On his way, he saw a young man, Joshua, approaching the house. As it turns out, Joshua was Diana's close relative. Evans was able to drop whatever he was carrying, ran back into the house, and alerted the others. The gang was able to escape through the back door, carrying whatever they could. On entering the compound, Joshua found a suitcase laying outside, and something seemed off. He ran into the house, calling Diana's name to no avail. In the living room, the TV was missing, and the whole house seemed messy. There was also a strong smell of petrol, which he followed into Diana's bedroom. What he found in the room was very horrifying. Diana lay on the bed covered in clothes, and petrol had been poured all over her body. The gang was about to light a fire just before escaping. Joshua tried to check her pulse, but Diana was already dead. The autopsy would later confirm she died of strangulation and assault. With each attack, the pattern became undeniable. Young women alone at home, strangulation, sexual assault, theft, and fire used to destroy evidence. Beatrice, Grace, Susan, and Diana, each murder was a chilling message by this gang. The people of Mawanga lived in fear. At this point, media coverage intensified, and police began connecting the incidents to Nakuru's notorious Confirm gang. Nonetheless, Evans, Kevin, Josephat, Julius, Dennis, and Isaac remained elusive. By the end of June 2022, it was clear. Mawanga had become a hunting ground, and the gang was still at large. The fires had risen again, and the streets of Nakuru would never be the same. The long shadow cast by Evans, Kevin, Josephat, Julius, Dennis, and Isaac over Mawanga and Manyani was finally coming to an end. After months of terror, arson, and murder, a breakthrough emerged that would unravel the gang's reign of fear. It all began when Evans made a fatal mistake. In an attempt to retrieve his phone, so he inserted his SIM card into Beatrice's device and switched it on. That simple act, meant to reconnect him with a stolen phone, alerted the authorities and set the police on his trail. On Thursday, 30th June 2022, Evans was arrested in Kuroka, Kisii County, where he had been hiding. Once in police custody, the web of lies that the gang had spun began to unravel. Evans confessed not only to the murders of Beatrice, Grace, Susan, and Diana, but also revealed the identities of his accomplices, Julius Otieno, who was 27, Josephat Simiyu at 24, Dennis Mbolau, 25, Isaac Nganga, 18, and Kevin Omandi. Despite the overwhelming evidence, families of the accused tried to defend their sons, insisting that Evans had named them out of revenge. They suggested prior grudges, that some, including Julius, Isaac, and Josephat, had once helped police capture Evans for petty theft. But the investigating police were unshaken. The confessions were detailed, corroborated by evidence, and pointed to a calculated, sadistic pattern of crime. Kevin Omandi remained at large for a short while longer, finally being arrested on Saturday, 16th July 2022, in Mayanja, Bungoma County. With all 6 in custody, the investigation intensified. Evans admitted that the gang had operated under a criminal network and a cult-like structure, claiming they were paid to kill women. Whether this cult aspect was real or imagined remained unverified, but it highlighted the disturbing psychological grip the gang had on its members. When presented in Nakuru Court, Evans, Julius, Isaac, Dennis, Kevin, and Josephat were remanded for 14 days as police continued connecting the gang to additional murders. In the process, investigators linked them to 3 more victims, Judy Nyambura, who was 40 years old, and her 2 daughters, Shadaya Wangari Cheope, 17, and Rimsi Wanjiru, 11. Their bodies were found after a house fire in Manyani, Nakuru, reported at 8 a.m. by a concerned neighbor. Using GPS data from phones and motorbike trackers, police confirmed the gang's presence at the scene. Even more incriminating were the actions of Josephat Simiyu, whose fascination with cameras proved fatal. Josephat had posed as a concerned neighbor at the fire and gave interviews to the Standard newspaper and Ebru TV. The irony is that he described the scene and efforts to put out the flames, yet he was among the gang that committed this atrocious act. Videos from the scene later revealed Kevin Omandi standing beside a witness in a similar jacket, a subtle but damning connection that left investigators with no doubt about the gang's involvement. The gang's method had been consistent, targeting women alone at home, strangulation, sexual assault, theft, and arson to destroy evidence. From all their victims, the pattern was unmistakable. Mawanga and Manyani had been left scarred, residents living in fear for months. At the moment, they are all facing the full weight of justice, as Evans agreed to cooperate as a state witness, confessing to the crimes and providing critical testimonies against his accomplices. Also, the ringleader of the confirmed gang was later arrested in 2023, but crime in Mawanga remains high. The arrests of these 6 men brought relief, but left a community forever changed. This has been Dark Hour Docs, and thanks for watching.